Hello everybody, welcome to summarizing the first chapter of class 10 CBSE in chemistry called as chemical reactions and equations. I'm sure all of you are aware at this point in time that this is one of the most fundamental chapters that one needs to know to proceed with the rest of the year with this subject. So let us try and summarize this in as quick time as possible so that you're in a position to go through the video just before you write your exams. Now the chapter started off with understanding a few important reactions. The first reaction we looked at is burning of a magnesium ribbon. Now we all know whenever a magnesium ribbon has to undergo any form of combustion, or if you have to just burn a magnesium ribbon, the first thing you'll have to do is rub it with sandpaper. Now why do you have to rub it with sandpaper? For two reasons. One thing is there could be layers of oxides present on it, which you may have to remove before you start using it, or you could also have magnesium carbonate layer that could be around it. So in order for you to remove the oxide or the carbonate layer, we would recommend that you rub it first with the sandpaper and then you burn it. When you burn it, there are a couple of observations. You see a dazzling white flame, and along with that, you also see white powdery ash of magnesium oxide. So the reaction, if you all remember, was Mg plus O2 gives MgO. And don't forget to put the heat symbol. The second thing we spoke about was the addition of PbNO3 twice to a Ki solution. So when you add lead nitrate to potassium iodide, a double displacement reaction takes place where lead combines with iodine to give you PbI2. And PbI2 is known to have a yellow precipitate. This is a very popular question you can get asked in this chapter, so please remember the color. Along with that, you're going to get KNO3, which is potassium nitrate. Alright, the third example we are going to look at is rusting of iron. And when you look at rusting of iron, please remember the formula for rust is Fe2O3.XH2O. Whenever iron gets rusted, a reddish brown coating is seen on top of it. Rusting of iron is also called corrosion of iron. Please remember the color of the chemical that is obtained and the formula of the chemical as well. With this, we realize that all these reactions are undergoing some form of chemical changes, and we said every chemical change has its own characteristics. So let us quickly list down the characteristics of a chemical change. The first characteristic of a chemical change is the first one is there could be a change in color. And whenever you think of change in color, look at the rusting of iron experiment. Grey color iron turns into reddish brown coating of iron, so this could be an excellent example. There could be a formation of a precipitate. Precipitate is anything that settles down, that can be filtered out easily. Formation of a precipitate, the best example you could look at is the formation of lead iodide, which I told you was yellow in color. The third thing that we spoke about is sometimes there could be some evolution of a gas. Now, I'm going to list down one very important equation that you may have to remember very well. This is the action of hydrochloric acid on zinc. Whenever hydrochloric acid is added to zinc, you get zinc chloride plus hydrogen. So you notice that a gas can get evolved during the reaction. And how do you test for hydrogen gas in the lab? You test it by bringing your matchstick close to the mouth of the test tube, and the fire gets extinguished with a pop sound. The next thing that you also need to understand is new products are formed. Whenever new products are formed, you say a chemical reaction has taken place. For example, when you look at magnesium plus oxygen, giving you magnesium oxide, you notice that a new product called magnesium oxide is formed, and generally the new product formed cannot give you back the original reactants. We all know these are reactants and this is the product. Magnesium oxide will not be in a position to give us back magnesium and oxygen. Therefore, whenever we talk of new products, we generally talk about irreversible reactions. The next one is one of the most important ones. There could be some evolution of heat. Or in general, you just call it some heat exchange. Now, whenever we talk about heat exchange, if the heat leaves the reaction, we call it an exothermic reaction. when heat is released from the reaction. When heat is absorbed into the reaction, we call it endothermic. The next part of the chapter spoke about balancing a chemical equation, and whenever you think of balancing a chemical equation, please keep one very important law in mind, that whenever you balance a chemical equation, you always keep it in accordance with the law of conservation of mass. If they ever ask you a question, they may ask you a direct question on what law is applicable when you're balancing a chemical equation, and the law is the law of conservation of mass. Now, the next part of the chapter was to try and tell you how to make a given reaction highly informative. To make it very informative, you need to take a specific reaction and make sure that you add all the information there possible to ensure that it communicates all the given necessary information. For example, if I take zinc chloride, or if I take the formation of zinc chloride using zinc and HCl, I get ZnCl2 plus H2. Now, according to me, this reaction carries very little information. It does not tell you what the states of matter are. Now, zinc will always be in solid state. All acids and bases and most of the salt solutions will also be aqueous. Zinc chloride is a salt, so you're going to consider it to be aqueous. Hydrogen is a gas, you're going to put a G below that. Along with that, you also have to put an upward arrow to indicate that a gas is getting evolved. Along with that, sometimes if you look at a reaction such as this, calcium hydroxide plus carbon dioxide giving you calcium carbonate plus water. In this case, calcium carbonate is a precipitate. Precipitates are always denoted by a downward arrow, and they are always indicated by the state of matter, solid. Alright, so this is one way in which you can make it informative. The other way to make it informative is to balance the chemical equation. You notice I have 2Cl on the right hand side, so I'm going to put 2Cl here. I have 2H on the right hand side, I have 2H on the left hand side, so the reaction is now balanced. Now that the reaction is balanced, we say that the entire equation is informative. It gives us all the information that is required. After this, in the chapter, we went into the types of chemical reactions. Now, what types of chemical reactions do we have? The first type of reaction is called as a synthesis or a direct combination reaction. Now, whenever you think of a direct combination reaction, always remember you can have multiple reactants, but it all combines to give you a single product. You could just have two reactants giving you a single product. As long as the product is only one, you say the reaction is a direct combination reaction. Now, there are multiple examples you could look at. You could look at something like this, H2 plus O2 giving you H2O. Water is liquid, this is gas, this is gas. Alright, another example, make sure you're balancing every reaction. I'm sure you know how to do it, I'm just summarizing this for you. You could also look at nitrogen plus oxygen giving you nitric oxide. This is also an excellent example. Of course, this takes place in the presence of a lightning strike. You can also write that down. It's always nice to have extra information present in your equation. Now, along with that, you can also have multiple other reactions as well. For example, when you take calcium oxide plus carbon dioxide, it gives you calcium carbonate. And this is the reaction that is used to bring shine to the walls, especially when you're whitewashing a wall. Generally, when you whitewash a wall, you add calcium oxide to water to give you calcium hydroxide. Right? This calcium hydroxide is generally called slake lime, which is applied to the walls. And once you expose it to the walls, it reacts with carbon dioxide to give you a shiny layering of it called as calcium carbonate. So if anybody asks you what causes the shine to the walls when you whitewash it, it is due to the presence of calcium carbonate. What is used in whitewashing the wall? In dry form, this is used in whitewashing a wall, but generally this is added to water, so this is actually the composition of whitewash. Alright, I hope you're clear with this. All these reactions come under a very important category called as direct combination reactions. Let us move into the next part, which is called as a decomposition reaction. Now, decomposition reaction is just the opposite of synthesis reaction. So, where one big substance or one big chemical breaks down to give you two or more smaller chemicals. For example, if I take calcium carbonate, you notice it's a big compound. When I heat it, I put it with a triangle, I get CaO plus CO2. Calcium carbonate decomposes to give you calcium oxide and calcium and carbon dioxide. Now decomposition can be of three forms. The first form, which is the most common one, is called as thermal decomposition, which is this. Thermal basically means decomposing it in the presence of heat. Now you could also have electrolytic decomposition, where you're decomposing it in the presence of electric current. And the best example of this is electrolytic decomposition of water. Decomposition to give you H2 plus O2. Now let us first balance the reaction. I have 2H2O giving me 2H2 plus O2. Now if you see, the formation of the products is always in the ratio 2:1. It's always formed in the ratio 2:1. This indicates that the level of water in the hydrogen tube will drop by 2 units, because that is the volume of hydrogen that gets occupied. In the other oxygen collection tube, the level of water drops only by 1 unit. Therefore, hydrogen and oxygen will always be formed in the ratio 2:1. Now, it's called as photolytic decomposition. Photolytic decomposition is a type of decomposition that takes place in the presence of sunlight. The best example of something like this is the decomposition of silver chloride and the decomposition of silver bromide. Now, silver chloride and silver bromide in the presence of sunlight decompose to give us Ag plus Cl2. Here you get Ag plus Br2. Now, chlorine is a greenish yellow gas, and this is a brown gas or a reddish brown gas. Now, these two reactions are popularly used in black and white photography. Alright, now there are multiple other examples you could look at in terms of thermal as well. While I've given you one equation there, another very popular equation we look at in terms of thermal is the decomposition of green vitriol. Green vitriol is FeSO4.7H2O. Now, whenever you take FeSO4.7H2O, this is a crystalline salt. When you heat it first, it becomes FeSO4 plus 7H2O. So the water comes out. If you heat this further, you get Fe2O3 plus SO2 plus SO3. This is a very popular reaction that is asked. That is because upon decomposition of FeSO4, you get two gases, which are SO2 and SO3. And always remember, decomposition reactions are always endothermic in nature. That is because they always have to absorb some form of energy for any form of liberation to take place. Alright, the next reaction we are going to look at this point is a displacement reaction. Now, whenever you look at a displacement reaction, think of a reaction like this. A plus BC gives AC plus B. So you notice A will push B out and occupy the position of B and give you AC. Now, displacement reaction we all know is based on the reactivity series. And the reactivity series goes like this: King, Napoleon called monkeys and zebras for a super party. Holocaust happened. Cuckoo hogged aloo and aloo paratha. So you can remember it like this. This way, all your series with respect to reactivity of metals is clear. Displacement reaction tells you that if a metal is above, it is more reactive. If a metal is below, it is less reactive. A stronger metal can always displace a weaker metal from its salt solution. For example, if I take the reaction of zinc and copper, zinc is stronger than copper because zinc is above copper. So if I take zinc and if I make it react with copper sulfate, we know copper sulfate is blue in color. What is going to happen is zinc is more reactive than copper. Zinc is going to displace copper to give you ZnSO4 plus Cu. So the blue color slowly fades away. This could be one of the most important observations during such reactions. The next reaction we went into was a double displacement reaction. A double displacement reaction is very simple. All neutralization reactions involving an acid and a base in aqueous solution is a neutralization reaction. For example, when we take sodium hydroxide and when we take hydrochloric acid, what happens in a double displacement reaction is both the ions get swapped. So this is Na plus, this is OH minus, this is H plus, this is Cl minus. This Na plus combines with this Cl minus, so there's a swap of ions. This plus goes with this minus to give you NaCl, plus this H comes with this OH minus to give you H2. Alright, so if you have to write it in form of a general equation, if I take AB and CD such that A is positive, B is negative, C is positive, D is negative, this plus goes with this minus to give you AD, plus this plus goes with this minus to give you CD. This is a double displacement reaction. Now there are multiple double displacement reactions you could look at, and I'm sure you have already come across many of them. The most common one is the reaction of sodium sulfate and barium chloride. Whenever this reaction takes place, a double displacement should take place. So let's look at the valencies. Na carries a charge of 1 plus, SO4 is 2 minus, barium is 2 plus, Cl is 1 minus. So let us swap it such that we get a double displacement reaction. Na1 plus combines with Cl1 minus to give you NaCl plus. Ba2 plus combines with SO4 2 minus to give you BaSO4. Right? BaSO4 is a white precipitate. Right? This is also a very common example of a double displacement reaction. In fact, if you take any neutralization, that itself can be an example of a double displacement reaction. The last reaction we have to look into is a redox reaction. In a redox reaction, there are multiple things that we have to know. The first thing is, all redox reactions are reactions in which oxidation and reduction reactions take place simultaneously. And when we talk about it happening simultaneously, I'll give you an example of this. Let's take zinc oxide plus carbon, giving you zinc plus carbon monoxide. You notice that zinc is in combination with oxygen here, and zinc no longer has oxygen, which means zinc oxide has lost oxygen to give you zinc. So loss of oxygen has taken place here, indicating it is a reduction reaction. Here, in the meanwhile, carbon has gained that oxygen. So carbon has got oxidized, alright, because this is gained oxygen. Now, whenever we look at both happening simultaneously, it becomes a reduction reaction. There are a couple of points for you guys to remember. One is, every time you have an element or any, let's take a compound, any compound or substance, it could be an element too, getting oxidized is always the reducing agent. So if you notice, zinc oxide is undergoing reduction. So since zinc oxide is undergoing reduction, zinc can be categorized as an oxidizing agent. Whereas if you notice, carbon is getting oxidized. Since carbon is getting oxidized, carbon is the reducing agent in this equation. Apply the same thing to the other one as well. Any substance that is getting reduced will be the oxidizing agent. So look at the equation and tell me which is the one that is getting reduced. Zinc oxide is getting reduced to give you zinc. So zinc oxide becomes the oxidizing agent. It is always the reverse. Anything getting oxidized is the reducing agent. Anything getting reduced is the oxidizing agent. Alright. Now, the next part of the last part of the chapter, in fact, is something called as rancidity. Rancidity is slow oxidation of oils and fats present in food, which gives you a very foul smell. Now there are multiple examples that you can quote. If you take a chips packet and if you leave it outside for a few days, you'll notice that the oil of the chips that you're about to eat starts smelling really bad. That is because the air around us tends to oxidize the oils and fats present in it, emitting that foul smell. This is called as rancidity. This can happen with butter, it can happen with ghee, it can happen with fats, it can happen with oils, it can happen with anything. Alright, the best way to deal with things like this is either using a preservative, or you can also keep it refrigerated, or you have to also make sure that it is always covered, because addition of bacteria or addition of sunlight aggravates the situation. Aggravates means makes it bigger. With this, we have pretty much summarized the entire chapter. I hope you liked it, and please do subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and we'll be sharing more videos as we go ahead. So we wish you all the very best, and we hope you do well in term 1 exam. Thank you.